All right, Jeff Zrebiec from The Athletic, Ravens beat reporter joining us. Jeff, thanks so much for taking a little bit of time on this busy week. The Orlando Brown trade, we'll start with that before we get into all this draft stuff. How surprised are you that the deal went down, not that it went down this week or prior to the draft, but when it went down with the Chiefs, the team that the Ravens are chasing? How surprised were you when that trade went down? It was KC that landed Little Zeus.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. We all knew he was out there. We all knew he wanted to get traded. So, I don't think it was ever formality, but you think it's going to happen. But then when you see the team, it's like, okay, wow. And, it's just an indication of, the market for him. I don't ever think that there was this big market for him. And that's not because Orlando's not a good player, because he is. But, he wants to be paid. You're talking about adding a guy who's kind of a one-year rental, unless you want to pay him at the top of the tackle market. You're talking about doing it ahead of a very deep draft for offensive tackles. And you're talking about having to give up premium draft capital, which teams, teams just don't want to do. So there was a lot of factors that were sort of weighing his market down, where I thought, there's definitely no lock that they get what they're seeking. And I think they knew that too. Look, I don't think them trading him to the Chiefs was their preference either, but it got to the point where we don't really have much. This is a team that's interested. We like the value enough, and let's pull a trigger here and start preparing for the draft and how we might be able to replace him.
And it just shows how much confidence Eric DeCosta has in his own ability to build a roster and his own ability to draft the right prospects for the future of his organization, and the confidence he has in his front office and his scouting staff to say, hey, we don't care if Orlando Brown goes to our main competitor in the among our main competitors in the AFC, as long as we hit on the draft picks that we get. I mean, that's the ultimate confidence move.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a gutsy trade in that way, because what's going to happen now if the Ravens struggle at the offensive tackle position, if Ronnie Stanley happens to get hurt and they don't have that insurance policy for Stanley like they did with Orlando, and the Ravens struggle a little bit, and yet Orlando turns out to be a piece that kind of, I don't want to say put the Chiefs over the hump. They played in back-to-back Super Bowls, but if he turns out to be the piece that solidifies that offensive line, the Ravens are going to get criticized, and Eric DeCosta is going to face a ton of criticism, especially if you're perceived as helping the team that you're going to have to get through at some point if you want to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. So yeah, it's a very gutsy trade. And it just shows you, the Ravens are worried about themselves. Look, we got to get better either way. We can't worry about other teams are doing. And they have an awful lot of confidence in their ability to fill roster holes, specifically at this time of year.
So with the Orlando Brown trade, the Ravens land an extra first-round pick. Now, I'm of the belief that they are going to hold steady at 27 and 31. They're going to make some good, legit picks, that players that could potentially help them right out of the gates in 2021. What do you think? Do you think that they hold steady like that, or how do you think that extra first rounder for Eric DeCosta and company affects the Ravens draft moves, specifically on Thursday night?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing it does, Shawn, is it gives them options. It gives them flexibility. You can trade up if you want. You can pick. Like, if Alabama receiver Devontae Smith falls and you love him, or if you want to go back and you feel like you really need that second round pick, that's where the strength of the draft is, and you could trade back and get that, second round pick and an additional third, and you really could make it a busy 2 days. But look, the Ravens have a lot of draft picks. They have a lot of young players on their roster. After this draft, they're going to have something like 55 players with 2 years of experience or less. So do you need more picks, or do you need to focus on quality? I think in a perfect world, they'd be just fine with coming out of day one with 2 first-round picks, but it's really going to depend on who's still on the board at either 27, 31, and how much do they covet that player.
Now let's start talking 27 and 31. We all know the Ravens' needs what do you think they're looking at, specifically at 27 and 31? Let's say they stay there. By all accounts, this is a very deep draft. We all know the Ravens' needs. What do you think is their main priority on night one? You think it's now with Orlando Brown maybe shoring up the right tackle spot, or do you think it's receiver or edge rusher? What's your gut telling you?
Yeah, my gut tells me I think they'd love to get an offensive tackle, but I think I think we know them well enough to know they're not going to chase just to say they filled that need. Everybody sees that hole at right tackle. Oh, Ravens are going to draft one of these guys. Well, it's a pretty deep tackle draft, and there's no, I wouldn't put it past them in waiting on that a little bit, signing a veteran like Dennis Kelly or Alejandro Villanueva, and then drafting kind of a younger development tackle later. But I think I would be surprised if one of those picks isn't an offensive lineman. I mean, they've talked the whole offseason about solidifying the offensive line. Zeitler was a start of it, but now we have a subtraction in Orlando. So they still need to do work there. I would think the perfect scenario for them would be coming out with an offensive lineman, even if it's an interior center, and then, an edge rusher. They need that piece to disrupt the quarterback. And where they are in the first round is kind of fertile turf to get, one of those edge rushers, because there's a lot of good guys, but very few there's no Chase Young type. So there's figures to be a lot of edge rushers, quality edge rushers available late in the first round.